Hello and welcome to Ephemera. I am fantasy author Katie Brisky.
And I'm editor Jen R. Albert. We hope you're enjoying our theme music courtesy of Alex White. Welcome to anyone joining us for the very first time, and welcome back to those who have visited our virtual home before. For those who are new, Ephemera is an award-nominated reading series chaired by Katie and myself.
Pre-COVID, we held our events in the Glad Day bookshop, and while we await our triumphant return, we are delighted to have your companionship here on YouTube. And we would like to begin tonight by acknowledging that the land on which I live and work is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. This land is covered under Treaty 13 and is part of the Dish with One Spoon.
And the land on which I will live and work is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas, and is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. Additionally, this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation.
And what does it mean to be a good companion? To my ear, companion has a slightly different connotation than friend. There's a hint of some common goal or shared experience. Like many people here tonight, I've spent the last 3 weeks gazing northeast toward the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinabeg people. Their presence on that land, that river, and those tributaries reaches back millennia. For the past 3 weeks, that land has suffered the weight of truck tires, white supremacist flags, and shrieking klaxons. Settlers call this an occupation. They're not wrong, but it began centuries ago. This isn't who we are, white settlers say, as we flinch, in some cases for the first time, at the sight of the Canadian flag. But this is who we are. After all, no one has been surprised at the difference in treatment between Indigenous protesters defending their land, their culture, and their rights, and the self-absorbed temper tantrum of a privileged group. We're not surprised. This is who we are. But it isn't who we have to be. The fact that we're having this conversation, Indigenous and non-Indigenous people alike, is a good first step. We're not surprised, but we are outraged. The convoy's attempts to appropriate Orange Shirt Day was roundly denounced. Again, a good first step, but we can't pat ourselves on the back for doing the bare minimum. On Monday, rallies, marches, and vigils were held across this country for missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. A very different type of gathering, not to decry an inconvenience, but to seek justice for communities, for the oppressed, and for companions who will never come home. Where is the same settler attention and outrage there? Why did the federal government neither adequately fund nor resource the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls? Companionship, I think, is about sharing of journeys, experiences, and lives. It comes with responsibilities. How will you uphold yours? As you listen to tonight's fiction, I invite you to think deeply about how you will take your share of the work of reconciliation and nurture the seeds of something better.
Also, please be sure before you attend our events or now to check out our code of conduct, which is on our website, is also linked in our Facebook and Twitter page, and I can paste it in the chat. Welcome again to everyone to our speculative fiction reading series. Tonight our theme is companionship. I spoiled it this time. Katie's already talked about it. You know that when we think of speculative fiction, companionship should be something that really comes to mind.
And I think of book clubs, companionship, yes.
That makes sense. Also,
online reading series.
Yes, definitely like us. We have many companions in the chat here already. But you know, we should probably bring up our first reader.
I sense a cliffhanger here somewhere. Well, we'll have to wait and see. I'm very pleased to introduce our first reader and my fashion twin, Matt Dovey. Matt Dovey is very tall, very British, and most likely drinking a cup of tea right now. Although his surname rhymes with Dopey, and he is drinking a cup of tea, any similarities to the dwarf are purely coincidental. He lives in a quiet market town in rural England with his wife and 3 children, and still struggles to express his delight in this wonderful arrangement. He is a professional writer of short science fiction and fantasy stories, which have been published all over the place. You can read most of it for free at mattdovey.com or find him time wasting on Twitter as @MattDoveyWriter. Welcome, Matt. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Very excited, little bit nervous.
Again, be great. Go for it.
Thank you. I'm just going to read the start of a story that was published in Podcastle last year as episode 667, I think. Clouds in a Clear Blue Sky. It were a clear blue day, what with the factory shut for the funeral and wake. Colin was slumped in the pub garden swing, his straw hair sticking out every which way, despite his mum's best efforts with the brill cream. Me and Trev were stood by quiet, our hands lost in the oversized pockets of our borrowed suits. Trev's cheeks had gone red and purple in the heat, his top button still done up and straining against his neck. Mark came back out the pub with a plate of sausage rolls that he offered round. "What's it like in there?" I asked. "Grim," said Mark. "Your Uncle Gareth's lost his jacket, and then he says it doesn't matter compared to losing Colin's dad, and then he starts crying again. Seen it happen 3 times while we were at the buffet." "Yeah, well," I said. "Best mates, weren't they?" Colin grunted, swung himself a bit harder, but said nought. "Here, Colin," said Mark, holding the plate out. "Fancy a sausage roll?" Colin shrugged, carried on almost as if he hadn't heard. Then he got up and stomped to the picnic bench and drank his Coke back in one go, then slammed the glass down so hard we all flinched, thinking it'd smash. "This is shit," Colin said. "Really shit. Shit, shit, shit." Well, there weren't much to say to that, really, because he was right. So we stood and picked at the sausage rolls awkwardly. Colin stared us all in the face. "You know, they wouldn't even let me see inside the casket. Me own dad. I should have a right." "Colin, mate," said Trev, patting him on the shoulder as reassuring as he could. "If they didn't let you, it's for a reason. We all know what it's like in that factory. All sorts of dangerous stuff. I don't know though, do I? Not my 13th birthday till next month, so I ain't been shown round yet." Colin suddenly sniffed and wiped away an angry tear. He'd already got me my work boots. Found them in the bottom of his wardrobe this morning when I was looking for the shoe polish. "Oh, mate," I said. What? How to say anything that wouldn't sound like something we'd copied off our mums? He'd have been proud for everyone in the factory to see you with him, and proud to show you round and have you see where he did his work. And everyone always said he was the best at cloud making, a real artist. You could always tell when your dad was on shift because the sunsets looked like bloody magic. Colin knew all that, and he'd know we meant it, but saying it out loud would sound stupid. There weren't no good way to say, "Colin, mate, this is shit. You don't deserve it. But we bloody love you and we'll get through it, all right?" Because no matter how you said it, his head was too full of angry buzzing to hear it. And his head and his mouth both, and it kept spilling out, even though he didn't mean it to. "You what?" he shouted. "What, Jamie? What can you do? What can anyone bloody do?" I don't know. It's a question without an answer at times like this, I reckon. But before I knew it, my mouth had opened and I'd answered anyway. We could show you around, Colin. Us three. Show you where he worked and how to work the clouds. Mark looked up surprised and Trev near choked on a sausage roll. And Colin said, "What?" "Well," I said, trying to work it out because I hadn't realised I was going to bloody say it, had I? "There's no one up there today, right? They're all here in the pub drinking to your dad. And we've all been up and, all right, I've only been a couple of times, but I reckon I can remember how my dad does the boiler controls and Trev's dad works the furnace and Mark's dad does the water inlet. So between us, we sort of know all the main bits, right? And my dad got your dad to show me the cloud release lever. So I reckon we can get up there and let one cloud out, sort of, I don't know, a goodbye to your dad. Something he'd have appreciated, you know? Something he can see from heaven." Colin sort of stared like he hadn't heard proper, then swallowed and nodded and looked away at the cloud factory. Its squat, lichen grey chimney stuck out halfway up the hillside, above the terraced houses and the railway station and the grass valley off down the way. The high street in town ran straight up the hill to the factory, but it was a good 20 minutes walk. Trev shook his head. "I don't know if we'll make that before they notice we're gone," he said. He looked like he was sweating just at the thought of the climb. "Mate, you've seen them indoors," I said. "They ain't no way to notice anything. When was the last time any of them came out to check on us?" "Yeah, but," said Mark, "if they do find out, we won't ever get to go back. I got this whole speech off my dad about responsibility and good character and showing you were sensible if you ever wanted a job up there." I got that," said Trev. "I don't reckon breaking into the factory'd look good, Jamie." "I know," I said. "I had it from my dad too. We've got to do something for Colin, haven't we? We'll not be long at it. One cloud." I couldn't back out now I'd said it, no matter how uncertain I felt or how worried I was at being caught. "Let's just go," said Colin, grabbing the last handful of sausage rolls. "I'll tell them it was my idea if anyone stops us. I don't care. There's nothing they can do to me that's worse than what's already happening." He pushed through the wooden gate and set off up the hill, and that didn't leave no choice for the rest of us but to follow him. "It's locked," said Trev, pulling at the double door handles as if the chain might fall off if he shook it right. All of us were sweating in our funeral suits from climbing in the sun, and our posh shoes were chafing at our heels, and we'd walked all this way for nought. "Well, there's got to be a key somewhere," I said, "or another door or something. Any of you going any other way?" Trev shrugged and leant against a corrugated steel wall, ready to give it up, and Mark jogged up the factory front a ways to look, but there were only the big roller doors, and the switch for them were on the inside. "I don't even know who'd have the key," said Mark. "I can't remember him ever shutting down before, not properly with everyone out like this. Even Christmas has a few on quiet shift." "Don't matter," said Colin, defeated. "It was a stupid idea anyway." He kicked the doors in frustration, rattling the chain. "No," I said. Hearing how beaten he was then made my mind up. "No, we're getting in. Think, who'd have the key?" "Oh, I don't know," said Mark. "Who owns the factory?" "Oh, I don't know," said Trev. "I've not really thought about it before, I suppose." "Well, someone's got to have a key," said Mark. "Is there an office round here or something?" "Oh, only Uncle Garrett's booth at the gate," I said. "Oh, wouldn't he have the key?" asked Mark. "If he's security, it must be his job to lock up." "We'll have it on him, though," said Trev. "Except," I ran over to the small wooden booth, hoping, peering through the mucky glass. "Yes! You said he'd lost his jacket in the pub, right, Mark? He left it here." I pulled open the door and patted down the pockets, pulling out a bunch of keys and holding them up triumphant. We were really going to do it then. Best hope we didn't get caught and muck our lives up forever in one afternoon. We ran to the factory door, suddenly worried about getting seen, even though we'd been knocking around for 10 minutes already. We all yanked at the chains to unravel them, then piled in, trying to squeeze through the open door at the same time. The factory was still. There were no one bustling about between levels and levers, no valves spinning or belts moving, or anything at all. Only a warm, low hum and a scent that burned your nostrils to let you know none of it was sleeping, just waiting. "It's massive," said Colin, staring up in awe at the main boiler and the chimney above. "I never knew it was so big." "Right," I said. "Cloud making. Here we go. Okay. Colin, you and me will go up that ladder there. Where do you two need to be? Mark gestured to the far wall against the hillside. Oh, the inlets are over there if we need more water from the springs. Did you know there's pipes all over the hills? Me and Dad go walking when he's got the weekend off. We're trying to see them all. Trev cut in before Mark got carried away. Furnace is down below, he said, wiping the sweat off his brow. It was hot in here even without everything going. I don't reckon as you'll hear me over there if I need to shout you, I said. So you two hang about here while me and Colin check up top. We'll let you know if we need more of a vote, I guess. All right? Yeah, all right, said Trev, who sat down on the walkway in relief, leaning against a railing. Mark shrugged in agreement and started looking round, curiosity keeping him busy. Come on then, I said to Colin, setting off for the ladder. I stood back when we got there so he could go first. My dad had done the same for me when he brought me in. Like, he knew I'd chicken out if he went first and I had to follow. So he'd stood back as if there were no doubt in his mind that I could do it. And that gave me the courage because I didn't want to let him down. I didn't know if it had worked the same between Colin and me, but I guess we all had to fit in there and hope now. It's pretty high, he said dubiously. It's not so bad once you go in. I left it at that, trying to keep casual. After a moment, he took to the ladder, and I thought of telling him how proud I was of him, but I figured he'd not appreciate drawing attention to it, so I just waited a space of breaths and went up after. Not that I was thrilled about climbing it myself, mind you. We gave each other a careful nod at the top, enough to let on that both of us were glad to be done, without letting on we'd actually been frightened, even though it were okay to be frightened, because it was really bloody high after all. This is where my dad would have worked, asked Colin, looking about the platform circling the boiler. Aye, I said, nodding at the cloud lever. He'd have been there, working the release. He was both times I visited. Sat quiet, focusing, like he were listening to the clouds through the handle. He had a little bubble of calm around him, like all the other blokes weren't respectful when they got near so as they didn't disturb him. Reckon they all thought a lot of him, mate. Reckon they loved him a lot. He stared at the handle. I gave him his piece and went to my dad's spot.
Thank you, Matt. It's really dusty in here. I think someone is cutting onions in the next room. Yeah, that's why I'm tearing up. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. And thank you again for navigating the unfriendly time zones between us and yourself.
Thank you for having me at one small benefit of the global disaster at the minute, because I don't think I'd have been able to pop over to Canada otherwise.
Might have been a bit tough.
Might have been a lot. I am going to leave you all to it now, though, so that I can go to bed ready for my day job in the morning, and I will catch the rest of it on YouTube tomorrow, because I'm very much looking forward to all the performances and readings to follow. So good luck with the rest of it.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thanks, Matt.
For being here, and good night. And I think I know what Jen was alluding to earlier. Speculative fiction and companionship. You mean RPGs? Because see, you have like a group of companions who are role-playing as a group of companions. It's just companionship all the way down.
All the way down, exactly. And obviously, Prancy is the GM. And I think that we can collectively play as like a massive conglomerate character with all the audience and all the participants. But what type of character should we play as?
Well, the classes I can remember offhand for RPGs are Bard and Mage and Fighter. So like that's the one that's kind of like arty / witty, and I think mages heal people, and someone who's fighty. Yeah, that seems like a good range of options.
Fighty. All right, I think everyone knows what's next. We have to put this to a vote. Should we play as the bard, the mage, or the fighter? Let us know in the chat or on Twitter. There is a little poll on Twitter. But while we build our character, there will be shortly. I am pleased to introduce our performer. Kofi Ojuro, aka Illestpreacha, is a creative experiential coder who merges mediums to provide unique experiences and promote discussion, reflection, and interaction. Interaction, like our RPG. With a decade plus of performance, event, and audiovisual production, he takes his inspiration from endeavors that are not normally together to create a harmonic experience for audiences, users alike, by adding AV, narrative, and experiential datification. You're all in for a real treat. Also, I will mention that Kofi has programmed a couple of fun interactive activities, a little like our RPG, that anyone can do at their leisure. In the chat, you'll find 2 phone numbers. If you send an SMS to either of the phone numbers, you will receive a prompt to start an auto response sort of text-based adventure that Kofi has made for us. And you can do that just on your phone. Take it away, Illestpreacha.
Thank you. Thank you. Companionship. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes it's the sense that make us feel that we shall belong. Companionship, where the lies can come from the mouths of cunning lips. But for this, that's neither here or there, for I am bringing you on a journey that for now, you may not have to pay a fare. For this journey shall not be one of cunning lips, but to be something that you consider a stunning trip. But now let's take it away to a world that's unlike ours. A world that the journey you bring along not only yourself, but the depths of both analog and digital, where even some missteps can be created by code to be what you consider your right or your left. But enough of me just talking and stalling. As you see, the world is rambling slowly. Let's bring this to another pace. Let's bring this to another place. I want y'all to imagine that you transported from the current space into a place that you might not even know. That you might not even know how it flows or how it moves. But if you're in Canada, one thing I can guarantee is that it barely gets cold. And maybe there might be not 25 centimeters, but maybe just 2 centimeters of snow. So you know, a place that's unlike something that you've been told. If the sound moves, what is your insides telling you? Do you feel like this is something that you can jam to or something that you find a groove? Or are the elements just moving a tad too slow that you're wondering if this is something that you can continue to grow? Or are you like that bright orange that's coming in slowly and slowly as all of our auras begin to glow? But not everything in life is smooth. Not everything in life grooves. Sometimes we're just like these moving blocks. Moving blocks. Moving blocks that lift you beneath your soul. As where sometimes you try to think you can grow, but instead you have to unlock the many aspects, because sometimes you're like the anchor of when you're on a shipping dock. But what if we just like these blocks just keep growing and glowing, keep glowing and flowing, keep thinking where even if our eyes blink, it's not that we miss the moment, but instead that we take account of all these elements. What if the inspect of the disrespect really is something that lets you be beyond your own tense, beyond your own sense, beyond what you consider to be your pretense? Because sometimes the presence of just being is all that we need to keep seeing, to keep believing. Sometimes that's all it takes. But sometimes, just like a cake, you got to be careful of the ingredients you put in. Sometimes you might need extra flour or extra sugar to keep it sweet. Or sometimes you got to keep all those carbs out to make it complete. And maybe sometimes you don't need to preheat the oven. Or sometimes just like Thanksgiving turkey, sometimes you gotta add an extra stuffing. And before we're talking about RPGs, what colors do these remind you of? Are you a bard? Are you a witch? Do you cast spells? Or are you the one that heals others by using your vocals as internal bells? Are you the fighter that fights for the rights of your fellow companion? So if they slipped or if they tripped, you can pick them up and it doesn't add anything else but just a little giggles and laughs as you continue on, because we all may slip, we all may fall. But even if we fall, we can stand tall. And I don't mean stand tall in the physical, but both the mental, emotional. So not even both. I meant 5 ways. But even as I talk, does it connect with your soul? Does these words have a companionship that enters into the next phase? I will let y'all think while you hear the sounds and the colors flow, as you see the blocks as they move and rotate. Ooh, that's too fast. Chaotic, but not too chaotic. Let's slow it down. Slow it down to the point that is just to the corner on the right. The corner, but is that what we want to see? Is it like Sunny D? Is this how we get our delight? Talking about vitamins as the sun rays touches us with its vitamin D, vitamin E. But what about the vitamins that we need to succeed? The ones that will make us feel like we're humanity. The ones that add extra soul, an extra role for this is not simplicity, it's really complexity. Like carbohydrates, you got your glucose and you got your fiber. What route are we trying to be? Are we trying to climb up that is sustained? Or are we just trying to go back just to say we did it for the claim? Leave y'all with a moment to think. Leave y'all for a moment to blink, for a moment to breathe. As you think, what do you smell at the moment? How dark or bright is the room you're imagining? Are your taste buds feeling something that's salty, something that's creamy, or does it want something that's savory, something that's meaty, or does it want something that's just straight from the earth? No GMOs, just clean old veggies that would have been from the town of the old. Errors, but are they intentional? Let's change the vibe, as life is not a consistent ride. Sometimes you think you know what you're hearing, but what you're hearing is really just part of the grind. A grind that tomorrow might not exist, because we cannot determine what's next in line. So shouldn't we just try to enjoy what we see in our time, what we see in our line, what we see as our companionship intertwines? I'm gonna let y'all have a moment to think on these terms. Let you have a moment of think of these verbs. Because maybe even what you're thinking inside of you, you might consider absurd. But what's absurdity when we all know that everyone has a different way to observe? time is closing to an end. Hopefully you enjoy this journey that we spend. I may be a new friend or I may be not, but this is not the end of our journey. It's just at the moment it has to come to an halt. Enjoy the sounds, enjoy the rounds. Enjoy the next time that your inner companion that went on this journey has arrived in town.
Thank you so much, Kofi. That was mesmerizing. It's one of those times I blinked and suddenly 10 minutes had gone by. Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight.
Very dreamy, very cool.
Thank you.
I will put your Instagram in the chat here so everyone can check you out.
Yes, and it's on Twitter as well. And as you so rightly said, the journey continues. And to continue with our journey in our RPG, we need to find out what character we are playing.
It looks like from the Twitter and my personal preferences, we are playing the Bard. So
hopefully it can be a fighty bard, because that was my hope.
Definitely be a fighty bard.
Excellent.
Well, hit people with his instruments.
Sounds like a plan. So I know these things usually, I can't screen share, so you're gonna have to imagine my tavern.
Wait, I can wait. I have to unscreen share Kofi. Well,
you'll have to imagine it. I know that everyone is very good at that because we're all speculative fiction lovers. So we're in a tavern with our dearest companions when suddenly a swamp hag comes up to the table. It sounds like a plan. And she says, aha, I have a quest for you, adventuring companions. You must deliver a valentine from me to my beloved companion, the magical and sentient vine, Plantington III, over the ice mountains and in the depths of the wildwood.
Oh, so lovely. So we leave the tavern. We didn't need it at all anyway, and embark on our own adventure. The road winds steadily upward toward the mountain. Along the side, we can see a cart selling exactly three things: a sword, a warm cloak, and snacks. Do we have enough money to buy one of them?
We sure do, but just one.
Just one. So vote in the YouTube and chat.
Whether you'd like to buy a sword, a cloak, or snacks. And while you do that, it is Jen's pleasure to introduce our next reader, not mine. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. It is. As we contemplate, there's a lot of sound feed things going on. As we contemplate those wares, it is my pleasure to introduce our next reader. Vanessa Fogg dreams of selkies, dragons, and gritty cyberpunk futures from her home in Western Michigan. She spent years as a research scientist in molecular cell biology and now works as a freelance medical writer. Her fiction has appeared in Lightspeed, Daily Science Fiction, Giganotosaurus, Neil Clark's The Best Science Fiction of the Year, Volume 4, and more. She is fueled by green tea, another tea fan. For a complete bibliography and more, visit her website at www.vanessafogg.com. I will share that in the chat. Vanessa, welcome. Oh, wait.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. And I guess, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I read my first story, and it is about companionship, as the theme is. So, the young god. A young god wants to destroy the world. From the other side of the globe, I feel her rage. Miles under my feet, currents of magma shift and flow. A cloud passes over the sun. Rain falls in a sudden burst. Passers-by on the street hurry through backdrops, their heads bent. But summer storms are common here. Taxis slow at the curb, life rolls on, and no one notices a change in the beat of the world. I close my eyes. Eventually, it always comes to this. Flocks of birds are tearing at each other as I cross the sky. Starlings chase hawks, a crow screams. 24 tornadoes slam through the American heartland and into the south. I pass over the Atlantic, and the electricity in the air keeps goading. I find her on a bare hill, brooding under a tree of stripped branches. It's not quite dawn here, the horizon dark, yet the sky overhead is on fire. I'll do it, she says. You can't stop me. Her voice trembles, her eyes are black holes. Her hair crackles with sparks and her breath burns the air. I know, I say. I understand. Her hand lifts, but before she can complete the motion, I invoke the ancient contract. 3 hours, I remind her, the grace period due. The air around us cools. She glares. I take a step towards her. Tell me about it, I say. I do understand. I was young once too. It's easier for the other gods, for the ones born before, who can create entire worlds out of the void and then casually implode them in a fit of pique. But she and I were born of this world, raised among mortals, our heartbeats set in rhythm with theirs. They deserve it, she seethes, every single one of them. If there are any who don't, it's a mercy killing. Images from her mind catch in mine, pictures of what humans have done to each other and what they have yet to do. Bombs and missiles and gunfire, yes, and also beatings delivered with bare hands. A mob tears apart a teenage girl. Laughter as a child weeps. Physical violence and quieter corruption too. Poison in the drinking water, famine caused by neglect, indifference, cowardice, and greed. An old man dies of hunger and sorrow, alone. I know, I whisper. There are spots of brightness too. Sun on the water and children laughing as they chase each other in and out of the waves. A boy stands on a stage and sings with the voice of an angel. The scent of lilacs in spring and 2 people kissing under an arbor. A woman confronts a line of soldiers with flowers in her hands. The god before me is newly awake, only just come into power. She's shaking with the rush of knowledge and feeling, the glimpses into future and present and past. Do you see it? She says. What's about to happen? I do. A new conflagration, swallowing whole countries. War burning through the land of her birth, driven, as always, by human hatred, fear, and unreason. It would be easier to end it all now, she says silently. It would. But don't, I say aloud. Not yet. I search her mind for those fleeting moments of light, the faces of those she loves. I show them to her, the mortal family that she grew up with, her toddling, round-cheeked niece, her friends. Even I am there in her mind, her most recent friend, wise teacher and mentor. She sees the future in outline, but none of us know all the choices that mortals will make. Would you really kill us all now? I ask. Won't you give any of us a chance? She bows her head, dark hair hiding her eyes. She and I are not like the gods who can step away, who can drown or burn or shatter the creations and then blithely move on to the next. If she kills this world, she'll kill both me and herself. She'll kill the others like us, alongside all that she loves. We're bound to this world that we never made. 3 hours. The sun is frozen beneath the horizon. Everything is still. But outside this bubble of timelessness, a cosmic clock ticks down. There is no rational argument I can give her. Only hope. The touch of a child she loves, the warmth of her niece on her lap, tiny hands entwined with hers, bright eyes filled with trust. My own friendship. Hope that on some eternal scale, the goodness and beauty will eventually outweigh the dark. Her face lifts, and I see tears shining on her pale cheeks. How, she gasps, how do you stand it? How do you keep on? I take her in my arms. With help, I say. She slumps against me and begins to cry. Her knees give way and we sit together on the bare hillside. Shortly, the horizon lightens. Time steps back into place. The young god's fires were extinguished, but now a new fire burns in the sky, streaks of cloud lit by the rising sun. She's quiet. I stroke her hair. Not yet, okay? I say. Not today. She nods. The spot of earth that we sit on rotates into the sunlight, and I think that the sunrise is beautiful, beautiful. A cool breeze blows and a blackbird calls. We have to help each other, I think. There may be a day when she's the one to talk me down, the one to suspend time and keep me from breaking our world. She'll have to remind me then of light and all that I love. It doesn't always get easier with age. She's fallen asleep against me now, exhausted. I feel her breathing. I feel the earth and everything on it, all the people and birds and ants and growing trees, breathing. Okay. And I just have, this is my second flash. Oh, and the first story was published in Kaleidoscope in 2018. So this second flash, it's called Before We Drown, and it was published in the Future Fire just a few weeks ago. My love, I can see through time. I never told you, it doesn't happen often, but every now and then time's surface thins, the way a heavy sheet of rain might lighten into single drops before thundering down in an opaque wall again. Right now, as the rain falls and water rises in the streets below, I'm thinking of a moment from 20 years ago. A moment in late August, a bright blue sky. Do you remember? A spontaneous weekend getaway just before Labor Day. We left work early and drove 4 hours to the city on the lake, the city that we loved. Do you remember dinner that night? Fried chicken in the hole in the wall near our hotel? Do you remember sleeping in late the next day, sunlight pooling on white sheets? Your bare feet on mine. Do you remember the Hokusai exhibit at the art museum, the concert in the park, cocktails at the hotel's rooftop bar, an overpriced dinner at an overhyped restaurant we couldn't afford? Do you remember how normal it once was to do all this, to just get in the car and go, to walk fearlessly into a restaurant in crowded indoor spaces, to hold my hand above the city lights, to breathe in easily, to laugh while walking down streets that are no more, in a city that is no more, wrecked by rain and flood and time? Do you remember? Yes, I know we have to go. We're packing our things and still trying to get a cell phone signal. We have to evacuate again. But first, my love, remember, listen to me. Do you remember that moment between storms, between the plagues and floods and flame, that moment when we were free? It was just a weekend getaway, one among the many we've shared. Not our honeymoon, not our wedding day, not even the time we said I love you, or even our first trip together. But there are small moments that flash like lightning, that glow against the backdrop of time, shining when all else fades. Come with me. Yes, the waters are rising, but come back with me to that long ago moment. Not to the first night in the downtown hotel, or to the night after. Not to that rooftop bar or concert, or anything that we posted on Instagram from that weekend. Not to the weekend as a whole, but to a single instant of it. A single instant is all that's needed. Remember, walking along a pedestrian bridge, the roar of traffic around and below us, flowers potted along the bridge railings, gladiolas, I think, slender flames of red and gold and orange, the sky above us so blue, and the lake before us, a deeper blue against blue sky. The pandemic was briefly on hold. We wore no masks. The lake was calm, the shoreline intact, the lock gates on the river held. No one we knew had ever died. We were young and euphoric to just be together, to have left our university town for the weekend, to feel free. All the world was alight, glowing sharply in the late summer sun. The skyscrapers of the city were mirrors for light, reflective towers of glass and steel. And the two of us on that bridge, crossing thin air, holding hands and drawing in light with each breath. Can you see it? Can you feel the light in your lungs? I told you that I sometimes see through time. I saw through it then. Time's layers peeled away, and I saw everything at once. Anyone could have predicted it, but I saw it. The coming storms, the lake flooding that bright city, the ocean taking other cities along the coast around the world. I saw us here in this present moment, thousands of miles from where we started, in a foreign land, the sea at our door. I saw us meeting for the first time, nervous and excited, a blind date at a boba tea shop. I saw into the distant past, images superimposed upon one another, rivers running with trash and blood and glass, tides of cholera, typhus, smallpox, and more. Cars swept down highways by floodwaters, a skyscraper collapsing, a horse struggling and sinking in the mud and sewage of a 19th century street. You're not going to get a cell phone signal, my dear. The power is out. There's no rescue coming. Come stand here with me. We've already climbed as high as we can go. That lost city by the lake was built on mud, on drained swampland. This city, too. There is no solid ground. We've lost every home. We never had the children we dreamed of. I see dead people struggle and sink in the mud. Fire sometimes falls from clear blue sky. But there once was a sky that was flawless, curving over a concrete pedestrian bridge. You held my hand then, hold my hand now. I saved that moment, you see. I knew it for what it was, and I tucked it in my pocket and sewed it up tight. There are moments that would seem unremarkable to any outsider, but that flash within us like lightning, lighting up the inner landscapes of our lives. Close your eyes. Here's the moment. Time ripples and can step through its parting curtain. Remember the light between storms, the light on the water, that vanishingly thin window of clear weather, the last that we would ever know. We were young and hopeful. There is no fear. We're crossing the bridge now. The gladiolus are slender flames. The lake is a calm shimmer, a deeper blue against blue sky. Your hand tight in mine. Everywhere there is light. We're floating in it, drawing it in with each breath. A wave is rising and we're drowning. We're drowning in light.
That was so, there's a lot of dust in the air tonight. A lot of people cutting up onions. I keep tearing up through all of your readings. Thank you so much, Vanessa. You know, we often have to ask around here, what is it called when a story is both heartrending and heartwarming at the same time? And I think we have an answer tonight. Thank you for sharing with us. Cool. Well, what is our item that we have purchased?
It was split here in chat, but on Twitter, I think it was cloak.
Cloak. The Twitter contingent moved the needle on that one. All right. Well equipped with our cloak, we continue on our journey. Over the mountains of ice goes our merry band of companions as we follow a narrower and more rugged path to the wild wood.
But before the trees, there stands a dragon named Fred. They toss their rainbow horn and flex their sparkly wings. How will we get past them to complete our quest?
Well, we could distract them, or we could sneak around them, or we could try to befriend them.
Oh, distraction, sneaking, or making friends? What should we try? You know the drill. You can cast your vote in chat or on Twitter.
And while we see how our thrilling quest will conclude, it is my very great pleasure to introduce our final reader tonight. Tiffany Morris is a Mi'kmaq settler writer of speculative fiction and poetry from Chippewa, otherwise known as Halifax, Nova Scotia. Her work has recently appeared in Uncanny Magazine, Nightmare Magazine, and Apex Magazine's Indigenous Futurist issue. Her full-length poetry collection will be released in November 2022 from Nictitating Books. Welcome, Tiffany. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Willellen. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm going to be reading two flash stories. The first is called Looking for the Flower Man, and it's going to be in a folk horror anthology at some point later this year or next year. Before the burning horizon, black bulbs bloom from white earth, a field, a pile of salt. The flowers quiver in the dull light of a burned-out sun. They hold secrets, medicines, burning truth that can't be held in the blood. Every day the flower man carries the bouquets in a large wicker basket on his back, bundles wrapped in tongue-red ribbon. He wanders fallow fields, holding onto the promise of blooming. His skull is stained pink with botanical ichor. His clothes smell of pollen, and his voice is the humming of bees. You do not know what disaster transformed this town into ruin. It rusts at the borders. It dissolves. It erodes. It falls apart. Mouths stretch to scream, and the sky stretches with them. You cannot decide how you feel about this new collapsing world, other than lonely, that much is certain. But even in this devastated place, the windows stay open. Curtains flutter in the air. A woman on a bench lives 7 stages of her life at once. They flicker out ghostly from her, extending at each side. When she breathes in, they collapse into her single self in her middle age. The gray locks of her old woman hair fly wild, snake-like around her. Her smile cracks and trembles at the corners. You tell her you are looking for the flower man. Have you seen him today? Her 7 selves shake their heads no. Only some of them are smiling. I'll try the bakery, you say, and she does not indicate that she's heard you. The bakery has stayed open despite it all. The inside of the store is bright and smells of spun sugar and heavy whipping cream. Cakes shine in chrome and glass display cases, small vestiges of a once life. The young man at the counter doesn't look up. Excuse me, have you seen the flower man? He's in the cemetery today. He finally looks at you and smiles. His scar stretches his skin. It's migration day. Of course, I'll have to get there right away. I'm headed there myself. I never like to miss it. Are you waiting for anyone? He ignores the question and moves out from behind the counter. He gestures for you to follow him and you walk along his side. The light feels different as you walk, the day spitting golden as you both move into a cemetery procession. The people dance and shuffle and march around you, weeping and laughing. The cemetery yawns quiet into the edge of town. The people were waiting for the spirits of the dead to return and perch in the trees, like birds with spectral plumage. Oh, I don't have an offering, you tell the young man. You only have the money for the flowers. He reached into his pocket and gives you an old arcade coin. It is a dull fake gold. Don't worry, he says. I use these every year. They're rare from the before time. Thank you. I wouldn't want anyone to miss this, he says. It's my favorite day. It's always a good time, you reply. You can't remember the last time you were actually in the cemetery for Migration Day. The cemetery gates stretch wrought iron arms around the graves. Fresh blooms from the flower man mark each one, pink and orange and yellow gleaming against epitaphs, so that the spirits may feel welcomed and respected. At the entrance, a man with gold teeth takes the arcade coin from your outstretched hand. For maintenance, God bless, he says to each person as they enter. You follow the young man to a large sycamore tree. The first thing to appear on the tree limb is a leg, then a torso, arms, a skull, skin, a smiling mouth and eyes that look everywhere and nowhere all at once. Welcome back, the young man says to the spirit. He reaches into his pocket and leaves a crumpled flower at the bottom of the tree. The spirit continues to smile. Do you know him, you ask? No, but my uncle should arrive today. I have a special coin for him. Before you can ask to see it, he says, I'm going to go look for him now. I'll see you later. Thank you again, you reply, but the young man has already set on his way to the northern part of the grounds. You walk among the strewn flowers and candies and letters. An arm, a leg, a torso, a grinning skull. The spirits come to roost in the tall reaching limbs, mouthing mute greetings to the world of the living, flickering gas lamp beautiful against sighing leaves. You spot the flower man. He approaches you, hunched over but whistling his honeyed humming. There are only 2 bouquets left, one of prim bright lilies and one of the poison black bulbs. The bulbs are the dripping promise of death, your rotting, hissing desire. Bees fly out from the flower man's empty eye sockets and crawl along his pink skull, where flesh had once stretched over him. A magpie is chased out of the cemetery by laughing spirits. Something in your chest breaks open, a flood of light and promise. A bouquet of lilies, please, you finally say, placing the last of your coins in his skeletal hand. There would be time yet for poisons and their tearing of the veil. There was, for now, this day of spun sugar, an open window, curtains caught in the wind that carries the dead home. The end. So the next one is called When Evening Arrives, and it is my story that appeared in Apex. And it has some words in Mi'kmaq, but you should be able to either figure them out from context or I translate it right in the line. So we'll go. Before they arrived, the visitors announced it by radio. Signals traversing galaxies, warping time and particle. Syllables spelled out in numbers and strange hieroglyphs, confirming presence and arrival. Stella knew that there had been stories of people who lived in the stars, the world above the sky, and the people from Earth who'd visited them. Holes that opened in the cosmos and had people waking up beyond the stratosphere, staring from above the clouds and down into their old home. There were newer stories, too, of strange lights blinking gold and green, streaking across the heavens, hovering as they hummed a chromatic machine chorus over the sleeping ink-black world below. What did they want? An anthropological survey. Earth had gasped back into life with cyborg rhizomes, machine seeds scattering hope that stretched horizon to horizon. Metal merged with the primordial, synthetic but alive. The world breathed green once again. Unama'ki, where Stella lived, had been returned to Mi'kmaq stewardship before she was even born, and Stella was part of her community's organization that took care of the wetlands. Every time she walked through the swamp, the understanding of time immemorial shone blue sky bright and deep as the shimmering Atlantic that swelled a few kilometers up the coast. The visitors came in peace. They just wanted to see the restoration. Of course. People were excited to meet the visitors. Of course. If everything was alive, everything was constantly changing, and life was constantly in that sacred process of creating, then Stella supposed it was possible that could include life off this planet and in other worlds. Still, trepidation lingered. She'd visited the welcome Mawiomi, participated in the ceremonies, smiled at the people gathered with signs of welcome in Mi'kmaq and Gaelic. She stood and watched drummers making music that was heartbeat beautiful in her family's hands. She tried to ignore the fear and doubt clenching her fists shut. Invasion wouldn't have to be laser beams dissolving tall buildings to rubble. They all knew that much. On the edge of what had once been the reserve, the visitors met with the elders and other members of the community. They were shiny Brocken Spectre human shadows ringed with oil-slick rainbow light. It was the closest approximation to a human they could do, they'd said, a tinny, apologetic tone in their voice. They'd wanted to take a welcoming shape. Energy radiated off them like warm sunlight. It was a word softly spoken. Stella still tried not to look at them. They were preparing to walk the marshland. The late afternoon light illuminated the golden sheen on the hybrid trees. Go away, cuz, we're going to the old willow. Marianne, her cousin, walked up to her. Panic jumped up Stella's throat. But we can't, it's protected. Just the edge of it, Marianne said. Not actually to the whole thing. Clara wants to show them the sunset there. Worry surged in her veins. What if they damaged it? They'd all worked so hard to keep that old part of the land as original as possible. The willow had survived for hundreds of years. Okay, Stella said. I'm definitely coming too then. She didn't know if she'd need to stop them, but she would do anything to protect that tree. Clara, an elder and Stella's ex-girlfriend's grandmother, led the group. Her clear, strong voice switched seamlessly between English and Mi'kmaq as she identified the trees. Kusuk, hemlock. Stohung, fir. The shadows beamed and dimmed as they walked, their metallic hum echoing in the humid air. The visitors explained that time was a spider web, each moment a star in a small constellation stretching blue and bright. Claire explained our language, how things are known by what they do, that colors are alive and act as verbs. The visitors shone brighter and emitted a crackling sound at that. Clara chuckled. You'll see, she said. They walked the 20-minute hike to Old Willow. Stella tried not to jump every time the visitors' brightness changed or when they emitted strange sounds. Marianne wasn't bothered at all by their appearance or their presence. I knew it, she kept saying. I always knew they were real. She didn't take her eyes off of them. They reached the edge of the authentic marsh where the old willow bowed to the still water. Reeds jutted from the soft brown-green shallows. The visitors tried to move closer. Stop, Stella yelled. Everyone in the group looked at her. Some people laughed. Clara smiled at the visitors. This area is protected. We can't go any further. Just wait. The shadows retreated back a few steps. The sunlight stretched and sank closer to the tops of the trees. People laughed among themselves, making peaceful, happy conversation. Stella allowed herself to calm. Sunset deepened pink and orange over the water. Frogs croaked in the distance. See, Clara said. Ilwamagwiok, Gokhalmowich, Wigalog. The world changes color when evening arrives. The shadows crackled campfire bright, their rainbow rings whirling around them. The moment stretched infinite around them all, another constellation caught in the spider's web. The end. Malalik.
I felt like I just kept trying to write down all of the really beautiful lines. But if I'd gotten them all, I just would have written the entire story. So thank you so much. And I love the contrast between those two pieces. Thank you for sharing them both with us tonight. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to try a unanimous making friends.
I'm shocked.
So we naturally need to roll. I hope you have dice.
I do. I have a D20 that you would see that's right here. Okay, so I'm actually going to roll it. And we got 17.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good, I think, yeah. Okay, so we're bards. So we go up to Fred singing a beautiful song, and with our very fancy cloak, We attract their attention. They're intrigued by the song. They want to come closer and closer. We change our song to sing of their virtues and how much we appreciate them. And then we take our beautiful warm cloak and we wrap it around their shoulders because they looked cold. You know, they live near the ice mountains. And as we said at the beginning, companionship, it's about sharing.
Aww.
So we share our song and we share our cloak, and they help us go into the wild wood. And there is Plantington III right ahead of us.
There you go. We triumphantly hand over the swamp witches Valentine. Our quest is completed. Good job, companions.
What about the gold?
The real gold was the companions we made along the way.
I don't think we can get away with that twice.
No.
No, with the second event, we've tried to pull that. But here is a shiny loonie as a symbolic token of appreciation.
That works. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, please don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Ephemera Series, and here on our YouTube page, please subscribe. We'd like to thank the Ontario Arts Council and the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America for their funding assistance.
And as we close out tonight, we'd also like to thank our fabulous readers and performer, composer Alex White, our friends, families, loved ones, and you. Thank you for staying with us. We will see you for our next event on March 16th, right here on YouTube.
Good night, everyone.
Okay, good night.